Well, here we are, guys. Welcome to Life in the Peloton. As you know, Life in the Peloton is being brought to you by our partner, MAAP. And MAAP was born in Melbourne, a city with an unhealthy obsession with sport, style, and coffee. MAAP have expanded all over the world, but have always made sure they've got one cleat clipped into their hometown, Melbourne. Well, speaking of Melbourne, speaking of Victoria, I've travelled out of Melbourne, and I'm recording to you from a special location up here in Bright, the heartland of cycling, I think, in Victoria. I'm sitting across from the owner of Bright Velo, good mate, Briggsy, Tim Briggs. Briggsy, welcome to the podcast. Help me introduce this episode.
Thank you, Mitch. Great to have you here, mate. Great to have you in the high country. As you know, we're the epicentre of Australia's cycling, so whether it's road or mountain bike or gravel. So we welcome everyone up this way, so it's good to have you here, mate.
Tell me a little bit about Bright Velo, a place I love coming to stay, and your idea, because look, this was around before you were here, but you've completely revamped this place. You've turned it into this beautiful spot, a great spot, because you've recognised exactly what you said. This is the heartland. This is the epicentre of cycling, isn't it?
It is, and I'd love the idea of people coming to Bright and just relaxing and enjoying the cycling around here. You know, we've got some of the greatest climbs around here being Buffalo, Hotham and Falls. And then on top of that, we've got some great mountain biking being Mystic Mountain and Falls Creek. So Bright Velo is, we want Bright Velo to be the central part of cycling here. So you come here and be able to stay the night and then go out for a beer down to the local brewery and stuff like that, but be able to secure your bike in the hotel, but, you know, really make it a destination location in Bright.
Well, just behind us is the Whiskey Bar as well. You haven't just done it all for cycling. There's a couple little cool little spots. Our kids are next door in the cinema room. We're sitting in the library right now. Just to the left of us is the main restaurant and bar. And, you know, the rooms I'm staying in, the Eddie Merckx room, where Chris Froome actually stayed, didn't he?
Correct, yeah. Froome came down last year over Christmas and he stayed for 10 days training. He had a look around. He did some great efforts up Mount Buffalo and Falls Creek, but again, just made it central here at Bright Velo and was able to get out to all the different rides. But great to have him here. Absolute legend.
Well, just up the road is Luke Plapp as well. He lives in a place called Wandilligong. I'm going to get up to the pub just after this little recording and suck a couple of cold ones down. A great little spot as well. It is spread out with a few little pros. Speaking of pros, let's talk about this episode. Jack Haig. Do you know Haigie, Briggs?
Oh, look, I've seen some pictures. I know Green Edge came to Bright Velo back in the early days, and Haigie was one out of the early members of it, a young buck, so he would have been trying to take your wheel, I would have thought. Is that right?
Yeah, that is true. We came through here and it was about 2015. Haigie got a stagiaire with the team and we came through here on a training camp. We're heading over to Beechworth, actually, and I just about had enough. We talk about it in the episode. Haigie was absolutely half-wheeling me the whole training camp. I was like, that's it. I'm going to put this guy to bed. So I'll let you wait for the episode, guys, to hear about that. If you don't know who I'm talking about, Jack Haig, the Dauphiné is on right now, and Haigie is the man of the Dauphiné. He is actually sitting about 10th on GC at the moment. He's finished 5th 3 times there. He loves that race, but it's also been a story for him where it hasn't always led to the success that he wants in the Tour de France. And, you know, he's getting to the back end of his career now. He's had a really interesting pathway into the Peloton, not a typical path. Started cycling in a different way. His family wasn't in cycling, went to mountain biking, and then just sort of got discovered when he did a road training camp. Then from there, it sort of followed on, but he didn't do the normal thing like the Australians. He stayed over in Europe. This episode is really great because I really love Haigie, as much as we butted heads in that first training camp. We'll put in the room afterwards over in South Africa where we sort of got a chance then to sort of just bury the hatchet and just sort of understand each other. I was a few years older than him, so I was trying to pass some knowledge on to him as well.
It sounds interesting, mate. I'm keen to hear those stories.
Well, what's going on in the Peloton at the moment, 60% of the Peloton are using HVMN. I'm talking about ketone IQ. Now, Briggsy, you would have noticed it from afar. The Peloton's going faster. You probably heard about it. You've got guys like Plappy coming in. You've got Froome coming by. The Peloton's going super quick now. You know, it pushed me out the back pretty quickly. But these guys, these older guys, they're seeing the change. The young guys aren't noticing. One of the big things is ketone IQ. This product is amazing. I'm using it myself.
Can you tell me, look, I'm not sure, I've heard about ketones, but I don't know exactly what they're all about.
Well, ketones occur naturally in the body when you go into a state of ketosis, when you've got no glucose left in the muscles, or you're fasting, or you've been on a long endurance ride. Then the body converts fats to ketones, a usable energy source, and then you're able to continually exercise and move forward. The thing is now, Ketone IQ or HVMN have gone and made a drinkable source of this, and that allows you then to tap into those ketones for energy through drinkable ketones. You no longer have to be, fasting for hours or going into this state of ketosis. You can have these drinkable ketones and access that highly efficient fuel source, not only to allow you to exercise longer and reserve the glucose in your muscles, but one thing I'm noticing is the cognitive effect, because your brain loves this as a fuel source. I'm noticing it when I'm doing work on my computer or I'm out exercising. The thing I notice the most is how switched on I am. I'm like, I feel like I'm fully wired. I can concentrate, not wired like I've had like a million coffees, but I'm actually really switched on. The cognitive effect, I think it is. I've been really enjoying it. I've got to give you one here to sample and let you tell me.
I think if anything's going to increase my IQ, I think I'd be all over it, mate.
Well, if you do like it and you want to get some more, you've got to go across to ketone.com/lifeinthepeloton for a whopping 30% off your first order. That's ketone.com/lifeinthepeloton. And you guys be the judge. Briggsy, you can be the judge too and let me know how it goes. Look, just before we get to the episode, I want to tell you also about another exciting product that I've been using. I've been using it for years. We spoke about it, Briggsy. Up here is great for gravel. And I'm talking about Restrap. Restrap are bikepacking gear handmade out of Yorkshire. You're probably thinking, why Yorkshire? Why not Australia? I love these guys because it is still made out of Yorkshire, and every product that you get is signed off by the person who put the last stitch in it. The best part is they now have the Australian store, au.restrap.com. It's going to allow now all the guys here in Australia to tap into it with an Australian specific store where you can now order in Australian dollars, and of course that stuff is going to be shipped straight out to you that much faster. One of the products though that I am loving is their hydration vest. I was in it just before.
Now, is that the vest you came back from your trail run this morning?
I know. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I shouldn't be wearing it out running, but I love this thing. It's supposed to be used when you're out riding, doing these long epics, and you don't have to always be stopping, getting food out of your bags or out of your pockets. You can carry that much more stuff on you. You've got your 2-litre pack in the back, but I'm loving it. I went out running with it just before. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to try this vest out. And it works. It works out running. It works out riding. It works however you want to use it. I use it when I'm out building trails. I've just got this vest on me with all my stuff on me. It's so easy to move in. I'm really loving using it. What do you think? How'd it look?
It did look good, but I have to say the locals are probably not a big fan because you took them to the sword this morning. You're obviously going pretty well.
Old Stacky. Yeah. Chris Stack, if you're out there listening, mate. He wasn't happy, was he?
He wasn't happy with your performance, mate. He saw the back of you for the last 10K. So,
well, should we get into this episode? And you're going to be tuning into the Dauphiné tonight, Briggsy?
Yes. Are we all over it tonight? Looking forward to seeing a bit of a movement in the GC. See where Roglic turns up tonight or not. So,
can we see Haig get past his fifth position on GC?
I'd love to see him have a bit of a crack in one of these stages. As you said, his preparation coming up to the Tour, this is a really good race for him. So we'll see how he goes.
Now, one thing I forgot to tell you guys just before we get to the episode about Restrap is you've got to head across to restrap.com and check out this vest plus all their other amazing bags through their range and use the code PELO10 for a cheeky discount. I can't believe I forgot to tell you that, guys. There is a cheeky discount. Restrap.com, that's restrap.com, or for the Aussie listeners, au.restrap.com. Briggsy, it's time to get to the episode. It's time for you and me to go and grab a cold beer.
Sounds good.
Listen to this episode, and I'll catch up with you at the end.
Okay, mate.
Haigie, Jack Haig, welcome to the pod, mate.
Thanks, mate. It's been a while.
It's been a very long while. I'm going to go straight to 2021, and we're going to come back. But what I want to do is I want to talk about when you signed with the team, Bahrain Victorious, the team that you're with now, 2021, you signed 5 years. Not a lot of pros do that. You made a different step. You stepped away from Green Edge. You went on the trajectory of being a team leader, and it was looking great. 5th in the Dauphiné, that's nothing to be laughed at. And you go to the Tour de France, you crash, you break your collarbone. Stage 3, you miss the Olympics as well. But then suddenly, you fight back and you're 3rd at the Vuelta. This is something that is a reoccurring thing for you, Jack. But let's talk about 2021, that shift, that crash, and that fight back.
Yeah, it was a big change leaving Green Edge. I'd spent 5 years there, and then I was just looking for a new opportunity. And sort of Bahrain, and at the time that I was talking with the team, it was still Bahrain McLaren, and Rod Ellingworth was here. So it was going to be a bit more of an Anglo-Saxon team, and like they sort of sold it to me with McLaren being here and really looking into having the science of McLaren behind the team. And it was something that I was looking forward to trying to learn a lot from the staff that we could bring in from McLaren. And in the end, that kind of all changed with COVID, and McLaren ended up pulling out, and the team ended up being quite different to what I was maybe promised when I signed to the team, which was also a bit of a challenge.
What's some of the things they're talking about, like getting down on the F1 track and wind tunnel chesting and stuff like that?
Yeah, and they were basically trying to sell it as being like a new Sky or
Cool.
a new Ineos, because Rod had come over from Ineos Sky, and they'd got this big British sponsor of McLaren was coming on board. They were kind of selling it as trying to be a more current version of Team Sky or current version of Ineos, and sort of bring that same mentality across. And yeah, it didn't end up really being like that. And that presented a bit of a challenge in the first couple of months that I was in the team, because the team was basically completely different what I signed for. And in the end, yeah, it all kind of worked out. And I came into the season with a bit of a new motivation. And you kind of know that when you're in a team for a long time, you sort of maybe get a little bit pigeonholed into a certain position. And maybe in Green Edge, I was always seen as that young guy that wasn't really ready to take the leadership role. And then when I changed the teams to Bahrain, I really felt like I could reshape what my role in the team was, and I really wanted to be a leader in the team and take on a lot of more responsibility. So yeah, I sort of came to the season with new motivation, really wanting to show myself, and it started out well. I was, I think, maybe top 10 in Paris-Nice as well before this.
I saw that. 7th, I think.
Yeah. And then the season kind of just like kept getting a little bit better, and I went to Dauphiné. I was 5th, but I was super close to the podium as well. And that led into the Tour de France. In the first stage, I think I was top 5. And then second stage, I was top 10, I think. And yeah, then just on the very, like the last 10 kilometers of stage 3, I just got caught up in a bit of a crash and snapped my collarbone pretty good.
Were you believing as well? Like, what I was hearing there was like disbelief. I had the same situation, leaving Green Edge and a great team, and I went to EF, and suddenly, exactly the same as you said it, suddenly I opened my eyes. I'm like, hang on, I can be this leader. I can be this person. I don't know what it was. No one ever told me I couldn't, but I had this feeling I was always this guy in Green Edge. Suddenly I went to a new team. Nothing changed other than this new scope, this new belief. And I believed in myself. Probably what Green Edge were wanting me to do, but I didn't realize it. But I just needed a new environment. And so you had this belief. And did you feel the pressure of being a leader, or you believed you could be a leader?
It was a bit of both. I enjoyed the pressure, actually. And I still kind of enjoy the pressure of being the leader. And sometimes at races, the team will put the pressure on me because another rider that's maybe better than me doesn't like the pressure and underperforms when they have that pressure. And I've told the director in the race, look, like, I don't mind actually having that pressure, and the other guy can then maybe profit off that. But yeah, like you said, you just get this new opportunity, new people, and I saw just an opportunity to really give a nice first impression. And then that kind of then sets you up. Whereas like I signed Neo Pro at Green Edge, and it's hard to maybe change those first impression that you gave as a Neo Pro.
So tell me then about this massive sort of setback. Stage 3, you built up for the Tour, 5th at the Dauphiné, like you said, very close to the podium, and feeling good, team belief in you. The Tour could happen for me. I could be on the podium here. Crushed. What was that feeling like? And were you just initially like, no, I'm coming back, or it took a bit to get back, give me your mojo back?
It took a while, to be honest. Like in the hospital, I remember calling my wife, and I kept apologizing to her because like you sacrifice so much as an athlete coming up to this, and especially I maybe made quite a big change from in that Green Edge time to the Bahrain time of really wanting to knuckle down and do the 1% stuff. And then I was sitting in the hospital and so much had been sort of built up around me going to Tour de France and trying to go to
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Believe me, we need to do this. This sacrifice. It's got to be for everything.
Yeah. And then I just sat in the hospital. I was like, I just felt so bad, both for like myself, my wife, and the team as well, because they really believed in me. And yeah, it took a while, and it was a bit more of a complicated collarbone fracture than normal. So I kind of spoken to a couple of people straight away when I broke my collarbone. They're like, oh, no worries. Like a week's time, you're back in the rollers. No worries. You can go riding outside in 2 weeks. But I did what's called like an open book fracture.
Okay.
So I basically like compounded the bone into itself. So then just splintered everywhere. And I needed to have surgery, which I did in Andorra. And they had to actually take out some of the pieces of bone and replace it with someone else's bone.
What?
Yeah. And so I finished the surgery and I speak like okay basic Spanish. And the surgeon's explaining that he needed to take this bone from the bone bank. And like in Spanish. And I was like, all right.
That's to be right.
I don't really understand what's going on here.
I'm hearing bank and bone in the same sentence.
And I looked at my wife. I said, what's he talking about? And she's like, I think you have someone else's bone in your collarbone. And I was like, what? And yeah, that was also a bit of a setback where like I kind of expected it to be quite a fast recovery. Because you talk to some pros and they just do a clean fracture. They get the plate in there and then 5 days later, they're back on the bike. But yeah, it took me actually a pretty long time to get back on the bike and sort of, I was quite motivated during that time, but I really wasn't sure whether I'd make it back for Vuelta.
And then the Vuelta, you did make it back. But I guess internally, was it now this driver like, or was it just a natural driver to get back and race? Or was this internal driver, hey, I've got something still to prove. I was on this trajectory. I felt good. I'd made the sacrifices. I had that belief. Had a bit of a speed hump, but I've got something to prove.
It was this, because I'd done so much work leading up to the tour that I didn't want to kind of let it go to waste. So even the whole time that I was recovering from my collarbone, I couldn't ride the bike very much because part of the bone that had broken was also attached to some ligaments in my shoulder. So I couldn't put my hand straight to hold the handlebars. So I ended up just doing a lot of running, a lot of hiking and everything, just because I wanted to try and stay fit and not put on too much weight, knowing that I was going into the Vuelta potentially.
Let's fast forward 2022. I definitely don't want to underplay third at the Vuelta of España that year, but 2022. Old fifth at the Dauphiné again. You love the Dauphiné. You love fifth. We go into the tour. Tell me about what you're feeling about going to this year's tour. Okay, I'm back. Third of the Vuelta. I've proved myself on the top stage. Fifth at the Dauphiné. Great. Form's exactly what I need it to be. Let's hit the Vuelta. So let's hit the tour.
I maybe didn't feel as confident as the year before.
Right.
The year before, like you maybe said before, was probably my best chance of doing top 5 at the tour. I really believed that 2021... I was going super well and we didn't have that group of 4 or 5 guys that we have now that seem to be a step above, like the Pogačar, Remco, Jonas. They weren't quite there yet. And then, going into the tour, I sort of wanted to try and, showcase that the Vuelta wasn't just a one-off thing. And I wanted to try and do another solid GC performance. And the team really believed in me then as well. And they put a lot behind me and a lot of preparation with altitude camps and stuff like this. But a bit more bad luck aim.
Well, Stage 5, I think it was. You crashed and broke your wrist. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was maybe stage 7 or 8. It was just before the rest day. And it was the cobbled stage. So the Roubaix stage of the tour. And a lot of work had gone into that stage with reconning and checking tire pressures and tire and equipment. And I actually felt really good the whole stage. And like the tire choice that we made, I felt super comfortable on the cobbles. We had done, I think, all the cobbled sectors except the easiest one to finish. And the group was quite reduced. I think maybe it was like 30 guys. And I kind of remember thinking after we got off the second last cobbled section, I was like, kind of made it. Like, not really much to go now. Like, I should be able to get to the finish. And I remember we came through this city and Primoz and his team were really sort of fighting to try and move up. And I just got out of the way and said, go through, guys. And then next minute, I saw a hay bale on the side of the road and Primoz was going over the handlebars. And there's actually a really good photo somewhere. And he's got one foot unclipped and his foot that's unclipped kind of goes into my armpit. That then, I guess, kind of pushed my hand off my handlebars. So then I kind of took all of the force just straight into my wrist. And again, it's just this random unlucky thing. Like, it was my teammate Damiano Caruso was just the right of Primoz. He got through, didn't crash.
But that's the thing, though, isn't it? How many times have you been that guy on the right?
Exactly.
And you look back and go, whoo.
That was close.
That was close. Just missed that one. And sometimes it just ends up falling your way. You know, this is season over. 10 weeks off the bike, wasn't it?
Well, at the beginning, we went to this random hospital in France, did some x-rays, and the x-rays, they didn't really show anything. And I was like, wow, my wrist is pretty sore, eh? Like, it started to swell up while I was sitting in the hospital. I was like, wow. All right, maybe
so you didn't know it was broken at the time, yeah?
No. Like, it wasn't that sore. I took a massive chunk out of my back, and that was the thing that I was like most worried about. I had to get stitches in my back, and then my wrist. Yeah, we did the X-rays, and nothing really showed up, and I was like, "Whoa, maybe I'm a bit soft here. Like, maybe I pulled out of the race, and like nothing's wrong." But it was pretty sore. And then we did an MRI, and on the MRI they saw that there could be a small fracture in my scaphoid. And I was like, oh, okay, well, scaphoid is normally not so bad. You just put a little screw in it and I can be back, like come back for Welter like the other year. Anyway, got
good recipe. Yeah, it worked well last time.
Yeah, and like I was already in the hospital, like thinking about this, and I was way better in terms of feeling than the year before, because with my collarbone, it was really painful because I had all the bone splinters. So with my wrist, I was like, oh, sweet, I'll be back on the bike in no time and get going and maybe race Burgos and Welter would be sweet. I got in contact with a specialist in Barcelona. I sent him through their MRI scan. He said, "Oh, doesn't look good. There's a ligament here, and he sees it a lot in MotoGP guys." He said, "Oh, I think you need to come in and we need to do an arthroscopy and have a look inside your wrist and see." I was like, "Oh, all right. Well, I think it should be okay." Like, went, did a few more tests and X-rays, and then I ended up having the arthroscopy, and then I broke I 95% tore I think it's called the lunate ligament or something. Anyway,
I wouldn't know, yeah.
But yeah, basically I ended up breaking the scaphoid, the small lunate bone, and then I broke the cartilage at the end of my radius. And then then I broke the ligament, and the ligament's the thing that takes a really long time to heal.
So this is essentially season done, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't so good. Once I got the news about the ligament, that was basically season done. I had these external wires basically going through my wrist that immobilized my wrist so the ligament could attach itself without them needing to sew it back together for recovery purposes. And basically I couldn't move my wrist for like 5 weeks.
What's going through your head at this point? What's the external pressure from the team at this point? You know, you've signed this 5-year deal. You've come on this hope. Things are looking great. Every time you go to the Dauphiné, also every time you do Paris-Nice, a good result. You're building. You're there on the cusp. You're floating around these top contenders, but this bad luck. Even though you know it's bad luck, everyone knows it's bad luck. The team knows it's bad luck. I get the feeling, I could be wrong, weirdly, teams start slightly piling the pressure on a bit. Is that what happened? Piling the pressure on yourself? Was the team? How were you? Where was your headspace at this point?
I think it got made a little bit easier when it was pretty clear I couldn't race for the rest of the season. I think it gets real complicated when you're on the cusp of racing or not, and that's when the team kind of wants to put maybe a bit of pressure for you to come back just a little bit quicker than maybe is necessary. But when it was pretty clear I wasn't going to race for the rest of the season, the team was actually quite good about it. And they said, look, just take your time, do the proper rehab, make sure the wrist is 100%, and then we'll get you back the next season.
So what happened the next season? Once again, 5th at Dauphiné. You know, you're looking good, eh? That you've done the program right. You're like, cool, 5th works for me. But now suddenly you're in a bit of a supporting role. This is something that's slightly changed in the team. They've got Bilbao and Landa there, and they've got you in a supporting role. Tell me a little bit about how this happened. Is this something that the team devised because they didn't think you were at the level? They've got these other guys that were maybe better than you, or they thought, hang on, Jack might work better if he's in this supporting role and shine a different way, take the pressure off. That's what I was sort of reading between the lines. I could be completely wrong.
So I think we need to step back a little bit there as well, because we started planning for the 2023 season. The team was like, right, tour hasn't worked. Let's try something else. So then I went to the Giro, actually.
The Giro, of course.
So I had a bit of a different race program, and I went to the Giro, and I don't particularly like the cold, wet conditions. I've always historically done quite bad. And then this Giro that we had in 2023, we barely had a sunny day. So I didn't really have a great experience there, and I actually crashed going in the feed zone where I wasn't trying to take a feed bag. The Swanee thought I was trying to take a feed bag, and they swung the feed bag out, and then the feed bag took out my handlebars. Yeah.
The old typical, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So then that also kind of ruined the rest of the Giro for me a little bit, where I really struggled to come back. I think I maybe had a bit of an undiagnosed concussion or something there, and I just really didn't feel myself.
You just punched through it.
Yeah, I just kind of got through it, and I was like, I just really wanted to finish Grand Tour, basically, because the tour I didn't finish the year before, then, yeah, I just wanted to finish it. And on stage, like 16 or 17, the performance manager, he came and said, I think I need you to do Dauphiné. And I wasn't meant to race. I was like, kind of had a bit of a holiday book with the family, didn't really want to go, and I was like, okay, whatever, I'll go.
I'll knock another fifth out if I need to.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. You ever do the Giro Dauphiné or the Giro Swiss?
I did. No, I never did them combo. No.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I always see people because it's like it comes around super quick.
Mate, I think I had 5 days after the end of the Giro until leaving for Dauphiné. Like, it was a bit ridiculous. And the first 2 days in Dauphiné, I was like, I don't want to be here, eh?
Well, your head's not on, let alone your body.
No, like, I really didn't feel good. And then I just started to feel a little bit better and a little bit better as Dauphiné went on. And then a couple of people on the team started joking, like, you could go to the Tour, eh? And I was like, nah, I won't go to the Tour.
Yeah,
like,
I don't want to go to the Tour.
Like, who's done Giro Dauphiné Tour? Like, that's a ridiculous race program. Like, I'd never do that. And then, like...
With practically 10 days off, I guess, between total? 5 before, 5 after, is it? Or
no, so you got, like, 2 weeks after Dauphiné.
2 weeks, right.
Yeah, plenty of time.
Yeah, heaps. Do a little block.
The idea of doing the tour, like, sort of was like, actually, maybe I'm going right here. Like, I got 5th again. Like, I got 5th the last 2 years, and the tour was, I guess I could have gone okay. So then I spoke and I said, look, I can go to the tour if you want, but I'm not going to ride GC. Like, I was pretty mentally done. I said, I'll go and I'll try and help and maybe try getting a breakaway. I thought I had good legs after Dauphiné. So that's kind of how the supporting role came about. Okay. It was more of like a bit of a last minute race calendar change, because at the beginning of the season, it was meant to be Giro, take a break, do Vuelta Burgos, race Vuelta España, and then just kind of all...
So how did you find that going into the tour? I know it was a completely different scenario, but I guess a little bit back to the way you sort of started riding at Green Edge in that supporting role, a really, really good super domestique, for the eights. You had some great rides there. How did you find slotting back into that role after a couple of years being the leader going there?
It was quite nice, actually. I quite enjoyed it. And we went there not with a clear GC leader either. We kind of went there with Peo, hoping he can do well in GC, but not putting a whole lot of focus on it and focusing more on trying to do well in stages. And if the GC worked out, which it kind of did, Peo got in a breakaway, got a bit of time, then we would try and go for it. But it was nice to be in a bit of a supporting role, not having all that pressure as well.
So you went back to Australia this year, something you haven't done for 7 years. Was that something about, I don't know, reconnecting with Australia? Because something I found really interesting where we crossed paths back in Green Edge when you first came across, I started understanding your story a little bit. You had a very different story into the Peloton. And that's why I wanted to sort of set up this little period through 21, 22, 23. That ability to come back from some massive hurdles, some massive setbacks. You've got this ability to just sort of break away from the mold, break away from that cycling bubble, ignore all the naysayers, ignore the pressure and just go, I know you still feel it, but you've got this ability to just go, nah, I know what's right. I'll lock myself away in Andorra. I don't need to go back to Australia every year. I don't need to do this. I just know what I need to do, Jack Haig. I need to go out and hike. I need to go out and run. So back to Australia, what was this about?
One, it had been quite a long time and I sort of wanted to come back. 2, I finished my season quite early. So my last races were the Canadian Classics. So I wanted to start my season early. And I saw it as a bit of an opportunity to, reconnect with some people I hadn't seen in a long time, see some family, and just sort of come back to the Australian cycling community a little bit. Maybe as I'm getting a little bit older, I appreciate more what some of the older guys did to me when I was younger. And I realize I quite enjoy helping people, or like trying to give people a little bit of advice and help them the way that some of the older guys helped me, because it makes your life so much easier. It can just be something super simple that when you're the more experienced guy seems like nothing, but you tell it to a younger guy and then that unlocks something in them that they're like, oh, wow, that was actually really helpful. I don't know, I kind of like that. So I wanted to come back for a combination of those things.
Well, tell everyone about a little bit about where you grew up, your story from the beginning, because, a little bit, so you were telling me you were sort of just a bit of a go-mad. You do a lot of things on your own and you just sort of grew up a bit differently to most people, and especially your cycling story. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of little Jack Haig.
So I think maybe this is also another reason why I didn't come back to Australia or I didn't have so much of the desire to come back to Australia, is that when I was younger, we moved around quite a lot. So I spent maybe the younger period of my childhood in Queensland. And then when I was like 12-ish, we moved to Bendigo. And in Bendigo, that was kind of when I got a little bit exposed to cycling. Before that, I wasn't really exposed to cycling at all. We lived in Beachmont at the edge of the Lamington National Park in Queensland. So I spent most of my early childhood just running around the forest, basically. And then in Bendigo, I got a little bit more exposed because it was possible to ride to and from school. And like my parents quite encouraged like using the bike as a mode of transport. And I quite enjoyed it because I could be quite independent from a young age. So I could ride to a friend's house or I'd ride to cricket practice or this. And I just rode my bike kind of everywhere, but I never really got into the competitive side of it. And then my parents were looking for things for me and my sister to sort of get involved in. And one of the things was a mountain bike club.
Oh, yeah.
There was a mountain bike club in Bendigo. And then, I remember we just kind of went out there and it was a handicap race. They put me off because I was super young at the time, like quite early, and I won the race.
Just like a Kmart bike? Or
It
you
was
had
just
something
like
pretty
it
good?
was some secondhand specialized rock hopper that basically the suspension didn't work and was completely blown out that they probably bought for $100 at a garage sale or something.
Good to have that now, though.
I have no idea where it is, bro.
It'd be lovely. It'd be retro as now. It'd be awesome.
But yeah, that was kind of the first exposure into competitive cycling, I guess. But I never really caught the cycling bug. And
Even from that race, you're just like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That was a bit of sport. You know,
Yeah,
it's just like
exactly.
another game or whatever.
we just did it like on and off a little bit. But my grandparents had a house in Ocean Grove, and we used to go down there in the summer. And I love surfing.
From living up in Queensland?
No, because we weren't that close to the ocean in Queensland. We were
Right.
up to a little bit too much in the hinterland.
Right.
And it was in Ocean Grove I learned to surf, and I really got into surfing. So then every summer, just go surfing. And then when we're in Bendigo, I'd do a little bit of cycling. But yeah, never really into the competitive scene. And there was the track cycling club, so I did a couple of track events and this kind of stuff, but not really super interested. And when we started going to the beach more and I started getting a little bit older, wanting to do a little bit more cycling, I remember that I had to like forbid myself from riding next to the beach first. So if I rode next to the beach, I'd ride the 10 minutes, I'd sit and watch the surf, I'd come home, get out of my cycling kit, get in my wetsuit, get on the town bike, ride to the beach and go surfing and not ride my bike anymore. Yeah, so yeah, I didn't really get into the competitive scene until maybe the juniors. We did a couple national mountain bike rounds, and that was more of like just family holiday because it'd be like Mount Buller. We'd go camping, and then part of the camping trip was I'd go race this national round, but I wasn't very good at it. And then my last year junior, they had a long team for the Junior Worlds, and they made that selection after the national rounds. And I think there was maybe 10 or 11 guys got selected, and then I was the last person to get selected for this team.
Did you care?
Not really. Like I wasn't really that aware of it, to be honest.
You're just racing
Yeah.
because you were just racing. You wasn't
Yeah.
like, I've got to make that team.
No. I never really thought about it like that. And then in the Easter school holidays was the first like training camp with the team kind of thing. We went to New Zealand, went to Rotorua
Cool.
for 2 weeks. And I remember I came back from this training camp thing where we just kind of hung out, rode our bikes a little bit. We did a small like 3-day junior cycling tour. And then after the school holidays, I rode to school and I was like, oh, it's easier, eh, to ride in school. I'd never done training for 2 weeks. And I came back and I was like, oh,
I'm actually going good.
yeah, this little hill on the way to school is way easier to do.
Was your equipment getting better and better?
Not really. Like I never really had super good equipment. And
Were you the guy that always had less equipment, or was everyone sort of just had a bit of mix match?
I think I probably had a little bit less equipment than the other guys. And then I think it was after this training camp, I maybe got like my first decent carbon mountain bike. And this training camp kind of opened my eyes to professional cycling.
Cool. Were you aware of like the Cadell Evans in the mountain bike world?
Not really. No, I never really grew up following cycling. Like we watched the SBS highlights of the Tour de France casually in the background on TV, but I never was aware of professional cyclists, or I never had people in cycling that I looked up to. I would maybe look more into surfing or skiing.
Why didn't you become a pro surfer?
We lived in Bendigo and it was just a little bit too far away from the beach. I really enjoyed it, but we spent still most of the time in Bendigo, and I would try and get to the beach as much as possible, but I think to be pro surfer, you need to be at the beach all the time.
Surfing every day.
Yeah.
How do you surf now?
It's been a while. We normally try to go on holidays during the off season to places to go surfing. So like Morocco, Sri Lanka.
Oh, yeah.
We spend quite a bit of time in the Basque Country as well, Portugal. But yeah, I don't get as much time as I'd like, and it's something that I'd like to do more of when I retire.
Is it like I did a bit of surfing when I was like 14 years old and could stand up a little bit, you know? I haven't surfed since then, so I've got no idea. Is it something that you can just pick up again and get very quickly good again, or it takes a long time to get the skill back?
It's mainly the paddling.
Oh, your back gets sore, lower back,
my
and your
arms, mate.
Yeah.
My arms and my shoulders. I don't get much of a workout on the bike, so that's the thing that suffers the most. The balance, it comes back. Like I normally I have a couple of surfboards, and then normally when I start, I get on the longboard first, you get the balance, the paddling back a little bit. And there was maybe 2 or 3 winters ago, I surfed a lot. And by the end of this, I was like, oh, I'm back at a pretty decent level here. Like I can spend like a couple of hours out in the water, do a bit of surfing and have like proper fun and like surf with some of the locals and hang out.
Did you go down to like Bay Ritz and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that good surf there?
Yeah, super nice. And San Sebastian, I really like being there. And then that whole area of the Basque Country is really good. We did a camper trip. So after Vuelta, we rented a camper in Andorra. We drove to Lisbon. And then we went all the way north up through Porto and then to Galicia and then all the way across to...
Surfing at all beach spots.
Yeah, but we had a 8 month
Oh
old.
my gosh.
Yeah, my wife wasn't so stoked. I was surfing all the time.
Oh my God. All right, well, back to what we were talking about. Yeah, so like mountain biking, it was becoming a bit more aware. You were sort of unpacking the scene and you were understanding it. And like you said, after your first training camp. So I guess... that I know the feeling myself. Even with the things I do now, I start running and I go to park run or do things. Something you get better, you get more interested. You say, I'm faster, I can do things easier. Is that what was happening?
Yeah, and then I reached out to a coach, and I sort of after that training camp, I was like, I actually want to go to the Junior Worlds because
You reached out to a coach. How did you do that?
Just it was through the mountain bike and cycling community. Like in Bendigo, there's a pretty big cycling community. And through that cycling community, I got in contact with a coach and he sort of helped me. And I had this bit of a goal of going to mountain bike worlds because my dad had never traveled outside of Australia and I'd just been to New Zealand. And I was like, wow, that was pretty sweet. And I was hanging out with friends, got to ride a bike. And I was like, that was pretty cool. So trained, got good enough that I made the selection from the long team to go to Junior Worlds. And we went to Switzerland and Italy. We did the Val di Sole World Cup in Italy. And then we went to a Swiss Racer Cup, which is like a Swiss national round. And then we went to Worlds afterwards. I can't quite remember, but I think I was top 20 in the World Cup in Italy. And then I was 4th in this Swiss national round. And then Worlds, I was not very good. But that was kind of the first experience of what proper professional cycling was.
Wow.
And going to Europe and having my eyes open to this whole other world that Europe and professional cycling is. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, actually. Like, I want to give this a crack. And it was at the end of that year, I finished year 12. Then I wasn't very good at school. I probably have a little bit of ADD or something like this, and I was terrible at school. But I finished year 12, and I said that I'd give myself until I was 21, which is the mature age student in Australia. So you can go back to university and your school doesn't matter as much. And if by 21, I didn't have something figured out in life, whether that was a professional cycling contract, a job doing something, then I'd go back to uni. So then I worked that summer to save up money, and I wanted to go to America because...
To race mountain bikes?
Yeah,
or?
because the European scene was kind of seen as quite hard and really competitive. And I saw a bit of a potential opening to go to America instead, still get some UCI points and get some good results. And hopefully with the idea of getting onto a mountain bike team. And basically, I went to America and basically backpacked my way around America. And that was probably the best experience I've had and like set me up for my life because I just learned so many life skills in that whole trip because I had nothing planned. I had plane tickets booked. I was staying at friends of friends that I'd never met before in Park City. And then after that, I had no other plan other than I needed to get from this destination to that destination because there was a race.
And you just be meeting people and just go on.
And I just slept on people's floors. Sid Tabile actually helped me out. The first US Pro XCT, which is like the national rounds, I turned up. I didn't have any accommodation, and I saw Sid with doing like pre-ride of the course, like the day before, 2 days before, and I said, "Hey, Sid, where are you staying?" He's like, "Oh, you staying here?" I was like, "Oh, you maybe have like some space or something?" And then I just slept on his floor in his hotel. And then just that's kind of what I did for like 3 months, just traveling around America.
Just the go, Matt. Just like, you know what? I'm going to make this happen. And I think that's what I've always really loved about you is that willingness to try something, to go out on a limb and just make things happen. Like you said, a really influential time of your life, that really important period between 18 and 21 where you need to learn those life skills.
Yeah. So I have this distinct memory that I did this period in America, and then I went to Europe. I went and stayed with a family in Germany that had a big specialized bike store. And I was there just killing some time before some World Cups, and they needed to go to Eurobike for the bike store to look at different products of stock. They asked me if I wanted to come along. Yeah, sure, I'll go along. And then I walked around this Eurobike massive complex. I went to every single bike manufacturer that I knew that had a mountain bike team. Just walked up, just asked if they could give me a contract. And like,
how'd that go?
No, I got nowhere, bro. But like, I think back now, I'm just like, of course I got nowhere. I was 18.
Who's this guy? Who's this annoying guy? And these guys aren't that connected, are they? Yeah.
No. Like, these are just like marketing dudes that are at Eurobike with nothing to do with the pro team. And there's just this 18-year-old tall redhead kid asking for a contract. And they're just like, what are you doing, mate? But it was, like you said, I said this thing where I was like, I need to make this work. Like, this is what I want to do. And I'm just going to figure it out and see if it can work. And yeah, anyway, nothing came of it.
So how did road come into the picture? Because it seemed like you were going really well on trajectory of mountain bike. You were in that scene. Where's road come into it?
So I was being looked after on the mountain bike with Talk Nutrition, and Dean Clark. He was actually a really big supporter of me at the beginning, and he started sponsoring the Avanti Hue Genesis team with nutrition. And they had a training camp, I think it was in December, around the Launceston crits that happened down there, or they used to happen.
And this is a Tasmanian sort of mecca team that's produced so many great riders over to Europe. You know, Richie Port being one, yourself. You got, who else have we got? Nathan Haas, Steele Van Hoff. You know, there's lots of guys coming out of that team. Yeah,
and Dean said, "Oh, look, I'm sponsoring this road team. Like, do you want to maybe do a training camp with them? I can ask now that I'm giving them nutrition." Yeah, sure, why not? I'll do a training camp before the...
Were you just like, I just need some training. I've got no interest in being a roadie.
Yeah. Basically this. I was like, sweet. I'll go down there, I'll get a training camp in, and then that'll set me up for the National Mountain Bike Series that was coming up later in the year. Went down there, then Andrew Christie Johnson, who's the manager of the team, maybe like 2 days into the camp, he pulled me aside in his room and said, "Look, I don't know what you want, but I don't have space for you on the team next year." I was like, "Oh, mate, I don't care. I don't want to ride the road anyway. Like, I'm just here just hanging out. Like, this is pretty fun. I'd never really done like a road training camp before." And
he hadn't seen you yet.
No, we'd done like 2 training rides.
He wanted to set the ground straight in case you had false ideas.
Basically, I think that's what he wanted to do. He just wanted to make sure that I wasn't coming to this training camp expecting to get a contract at the end.
Sort of good on him, actually.
Yeah, 100%. And then like maybe 2 or 3 days afterwards, we did this big 200K loop, and Richie Port came with us. And we went up this Peloton climb. It's quite a hard, long climb. And we raced up it just naturally. And then Richie couldn't drop me. And then I think after that, Richie then spoke to Andrew. And then I think it was either that evening or the next day, Andrew said, "Hey,
about that conversation.
We might be able to figure something out here, eh?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm like, sure, but like, I want to race the mountain bikes." He's like, yeah, but maybe you can do a couple like national road series. And then
was Richie pro then?
Yeah, he was riding for the Sky, I think. And then he was like overweight. You know how he was in like December. But still, it's Richie Port. Yeah. And like he was like, "Geez, this young like mountain bike kid, you can't drop him on the climb. Like, what's going on?" And then I think I did the first race was in Western Australia in Perth. And I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I won. And then that kind of flicked me, because then I was leading the National Road Series.
You're like, God damn it, I've got to do this road stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to race the mountain bikes. And then Andrew...
Were you even liking it a little bit, or were you just like...
Well, I hadn't really raced the road before.
Yeah, but I mean, that first race you won.
Yeah, like, I kind of enjoyed it, and like, it was all new to me. Like, I traveled with the team. Like, the team had like a mechanic, and we had all the bikes there, and like, I'd never really done this before, and it was just new and a novelty to me, but... I was way more into the more casual mountain bike scene and just like hanging out, everyone's friends, like it's not really that serious. And the road scene is a bit more like rigid and a bit more serious. And yeah, I ended up getting roped into basically doing no mountain biking in the whole National Road Series.
Did you win the Road Series that year?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that was it.
That was kind of it. And then because I won the National Road Series, I then sort of got an automatic selection for the Uni SA team.
Right, at Tour Down Under.
Yeah, and that was 2014. So 2013, so 2012, I raced mountain bikes in America. 2013, I involuntary raced road, and I really wanted to race mountain bikes, but it didn't work out. I won the National Road Series. 2014, I did UniSA TDU.
Because you came through with a really crazy crew, and now I'm fast forwarding to the road scene. You're a roadie now, and you're riding on the World Tour Academy, which is essentially, we had the AIS for the juniors under 23. There was SA.com, then it became the World Tour Academy, and then Green Edge Development Team, all in that sort of team. It's that sort of team. You popped in there and you raced the, many races, but one of them that stood out to me was Tour de l'Avenir, where it is the mini Tour de France. And looking through the results, again, I always love looking through people's different years. I'm like, oh, who made it through? And I'm looking through yours. Marc Soler won. We all know Marc Soler. Danny Martinez, my old teammate, he was there. In the Australian team, you had Nick Schultz, who's a guy who took a bit of a different route, but he's an amazing rider now. Alex Edmondson was there, Miles Scotsman. So you had some really good talent. There's heaps of other riders there too. Second on GC at the Mini Tour de France. Now you're in fully Euro Pro world. Tell me a little bit about that experience before you then turned pro.
So in that 2014, when I got the selection for UniSA, I won the Best Young Riders jersey at TDU, and then I went on to do Herald Sun Tour, and I was third at Herald Sun Tour. And then that was when I sort of got the attention of the World Tour teams, and Green Edge called me up, and I hadn't raced a road race in Europe yet. And they said, oh, look, we'd like you to turn pro with us. We think you're a talent, but you need to do some racing in Europe first. Halfway through 2014, I went to join the under 23 Australian team, and I still had one full more year that I could race under 23 with the development team. So
had you done any mountain biking between that training camp?
I won national championships on the mountain bike, and that was about it.
All right. So it was really out of the picture now.
Yeah, it was pretty much gone. Yeah, Green Edge was good enough that they basically signed me on, I guess it's called a pre-contract that allowed me to do this racing in Europe with not so much the pressure of having to get results for the World Tour contract. So I did 1.5 years more or less in the under 23 team, and that was kind of my first look into European road cycling.
Do you think now, looking back on that, sorry to interrupt, but you think that was a good or a bad thing knowing you have a contract and just learning to race? How was that with your... Some people work really well off that negative motivation. I've got to get there. I have to, come on, either this or, this or die, like you did with your mountain bike. I've got to make this work. Suddenly you had the comfort. I've got a contract. I've just got to ride 1.5 years in this thing. I've already got a contract. Did that work for you?
Yeah, I guess I'm quite a process-driven person and not so much a results-driven person. So I was really just driven by the process of self-improvement. So whether I had that contract or not that contract, I just always constantly wanted to get better. So it was I think it was really good for me because I got to go to Europe and I didn't have the pressure that some of the other guys had that they had to perform. Whereas I just focused on trying to get better and get the most out of myself because that's what I enjoyed about the process. And then I knew that contract was there. So I did Tour de l'Avenir twice. In 2014, we did it with Rob Power, and Rob Power was second. And then the next year, I was there, and Soler won, and I was second.
Moving then into Green Edge, what was that like? You're in the big leagues. This is where we cross paths. And I always remember the first training camp.
I was going to bring this up. This was before we signed. I think this was 2014 or 2015. I was...
was it before you signed? Yeah.
I was a young whippersnapper, non-pro at the time, coming to the Green Edge camp, trying to prove myself, half-wheeling everyone.
You were trying to prove yourself. You were strong. You were annoyingly strong. So much so, it took the whole team to beat you down. But we're like... That's it. We got to put this guy back in his place. So we worked you over, we dropped you, and then we waited for you to roll in. I don't know, how do you look back on that time and understanding what we were feeling? Like you said at the start of this podcast, we were trying to put some sort of knowledge into you in a different way. Hey, you need to learn what it's like. You need to we're not all here to kill each other. That's the type of feel. I guess you're a young guy. You can't blame that either. You're not expected to know, and you need to learn yourself. You can't get told everything. Think back to those early days at Green Edge.
I distinctly remember doing a turn with you on the front at one of these training camps, coming into Beechworth or something like this. And I must have been so annoying for the little days leading up to this day. And you just half-wheeled me until I basically died on the front next to you. And then from that, I was like, maybe I was really annoying. And then that guy that was always half-wheeling the pros when they didn't want to be. I was really happy to turn pro with Green Edge. I think it was a really nice environment. for a young Australian that maybe didn't have a whole lot of road experience to turn pro in, because it's quite a familiar environment. It's already hard enough being an Australian, trying to move your life to Europe and then trying to become a professional. So I was quite lucky with the environment that was there. And there was a few people that helped me out. Like, even though Zach Dempster was in the team, I lived with Zach for a little bit those first couple of years pro. He really helped me out. And then a lot of the guys like yourself in the team sort of helped guide me through, because it wasn't as maybe easy as it is now for the younger guys to step in. I think the last couple of years has maybe been a bit of a transition. You probably saw that in your last couple of years, that the young guys coming in, it's a bit easier than 5 or 8, 9 years ago when I came in. Trying to learn the ropes, trying to learn how the race calendar worked, trying to work out how to live in Europe, how to live on your own and have a sustainable professional career was pretty hard actually to start.
You seem to grasp that pretty quickly in comparative to a lot of guys. I mean, we see a lot of, well, I'm just talking about Australians now and maybe Americans and maybe New Zealanders, people who have to make that move to Europe. You see a lot of them get crushed in the first couple of years, you know, by the external pressures of the move, the on your own, and then the team in pressure, and then the racing pressure. It all just is too much. I went through it myself, almost so much so I didn't even want to go back. You just pushed on through. You didn't want to come back, really. And how was that? You set it up like it was a bit of a process, but from the outside, for me, it seemed like you handled that pretty well.
Yeah, I guess I tried to take the lesson from, like you said, that I saw a lot of guys struggle with living in Europe. And I basically just said that if I'm going to be a successful pro, I need to make Europe home, because I need to spend at minimum 8 months here, and I need to enjoy those 8 months. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to have a sustainable career. And then I found out during that first year with training camps and races, you were never really home to build a community outside of just the pros that you interacted with. And then that first year, I'd set up my apartment in Andorra. I'd bought a car in Andorra. I had a place also in Girona that I was sharing with Zach. And I kind of had more things in Europe than I did in Australia. And when the team called up and said, "Hey, you want plane tickets back to Australia?" I said, "Oh, no, I reckon I'll stay, actually." And I actually really...
I'll have that money as well. Yeah.
Well, I didn't get that money. So if they want to send it, I'll send them the IBAN. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed it, because I had a really long off season, because you come back to Australia and then you start training pretty early because you're doing nationals and
also you've got like obligations with, you know, Mitchelton Winery, and, you know, as fun as that is, you're earlier back into it, but you embrace it.
Yeah,
you know,
I loved it.
Opposed to just fighting it. And some people go, "Oh, I've got to stay in Europe," but you're just like, "No, I'm just going to fully embrace this."
I actually really loved it. I went skiing all the time in Andorra, went hiking, running. I took a lot of inspiration from Swano, actually, a good friend of yours. And he helped me out as well. He was living in Andorra, and I guess he kind of showed me a little bit about how to take more of a European off season rather than what most Southern Hemisphere people do, where you can start training so easily because it's summer. Whereas, I went super easy, slow, did some skiing, did a little bit of riding, but didn't stress out too much. Then did the pre-season training camp with the team, not really having that much pressure. And I quite enjoyed the process of having that time.
Well, we spoke about Greenwich a little bit before, before we spoke when we were talking about Bahrain, but I want to sort of understand a little bit your progression through the team. We spoke about, you know, being a helper for the guys like Yates, and the things you sort of learnt from those guys and learning those years that you've taken on now as a lead yourself. Now looking at guys that are supporting you, and you think, "Yeah, I was in that position before. Well, how am I going to make their role not necessarily easier, but better to support me?" But also, what have you taken on and learned? Things that you did badly there, things you did well, they did well, that you've taken on now to your career?
I think at the beginning, I maybe suffered a little bit not understanding where my position in the team was or how best to fit in a team environment. And maybe that was coming from mountain biking, where it's a bit more of an individual sport. And then when I stepped into the road side, I kind of stepped into that National Road Series and I was kind of the leader straight away. I never really went through that process of being a domestique or understanding how to fit in with a team dynamics. Maybe also my people skills or something weren't that great, and I struggled to fit in. And I think I really struggled, especially maybe the first welter I did. I'm not sure you remember. I think you were there with Steve-O.
I wasn't there, but I remember you had a really bad stage 21.
Oh, yeah. This is a different story, but I was a bit sick and I almost didn't finish the last stage.
I know. I remember watching it and thinking, I didn't know you weren't sick, but I remember thinking, he's made it, but maybe he's not going to make it. I can imagine how crushing that would have been. I was hoping you would, for whatever reason, get there.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. You've made it.
Yeah.
You know 21's nothing.
Yeah.
But it's on the paper.
Yeah, but coming back to this welter, I kind of struggled a little bit because I think Neil Stevens was the director and he had quite high expectations for me into the race. And then I really struggled to fit in because I just wasn't going very well. Like, I actually probably trained way too much for the welter. It was my first Grand Tour. And I was in Andorra and I guess during training I was like, oh, I'll just replicate a Grand Tour. And then I went to welter and I was pretty shit. And
did 2 grandies.
Yeah,
nice.
basically. Manuel, our doctor at the time, he actually sat me down halfway through the welter. He's like, hey, why'd you do a Grand Tour before the Grand Tour? I was like, I don't know. Like, I just thought that was what you did.
Everyone says you're always flying after a Grandy.
Yeah. I was like, I just did it in training. But yeah, then I guess moving into what I learned from that time was just to be really respectful of the work that someone does to help you. And it's just like the really small things, just saying thank you. Or just when you're in the bus and you're doing the debrief of the stage, just pointing out something that everyone did that helped you during that day.
Now, the DSs won't know.
Exactly. They don't know because they're not in the race.
Cool.
And it's just anything small. It's like, oh yeah, hey, Fran, I really appreciated that bottle that you got me at that moment. Like, that was really good. Thanks. Just really small sentences like that I found when I was a helper meant so much to me. But when you're the leader, it can be a nothing sentence that you said that to you didn't mean anything. But it's something that I try to do consciously now.
That's a really, really good point. And like you said, in the beginning, coming from mountain biking, I thought maybe the mountain biking, and I'm sure it did have a lot of positives, and I've heard this before, is that you learn a lot about how to take care of yourself. You've got to fix your bike, you've got to get your washing done, you got to do everything for yourself. And like you painted the picture, coming into the road was like, this is ridiculous. This is like getting spoon-fed. But on the same note, not having teammates and having to only look after yourself meant that when you had teammates, you didn't need to rely on them. You didn't know how to rely on them. So learning that skill, I underestimated that. And I think back to our early days, the things that probably bugged me or pissed me off about you was just purely you didn't know. You just didn't know how to work in a group that well yet.
Yeah, and I think it also was that I never really did team sports. Like when I was at school, I never did PE or anything like this. And I never really did these like team building activities, and I was more of maybe an introvert that liked being on my own and figuring stuff out for myself, or like I'm maybe not very good at asking for help, and I prefer to just like learn everything myself. And I wasn't probably very good at figuring out how to fit in socially with the group dynamic because I got to where I was by doing everything myself, more or less. Whereas, in the team it's different.
Well, let's talk about the tour this year. Tour de France, what's on your mind? You're back in the tour. That's your goal. What are you thinking about with the tour this year?
Similar to what we said before, that I think now cycling's really moved on quite fast. And you see that we have this group of really, really strong guys that's really hard to break into. And I think it's changing the way teams are looking at races like the Tour. Because you go there and you have now Primoz for Bora, Jonas for Jumbo, Remco for Quickstep. And like it ends up being, Tadej there with UAE. And there's 4 guys that is quite a step above, say, the guys from 5th to 10th on GC. But especially my team, last year we went to the Tour with more of an opportunistic idea of trying to get stage wins, trying to maybe animate the race a bit more than trying to do that more traditional GC approach where you send 1, 2 GC leaders and then 4 or 5 guys to really focus on those setting up the GC. So going to the Tour this year, I also realized that it's hard to say, but those guys are better than me. Like they won the genetic lottery a little bit better than I did. And I'd like to try and focus on doing well at these week-long stage races at a World Tour level. So like Down Under, like Paris-Nice, like Dauphiné, because doing a top 5 there, I think, is a little bit more realistic than doing a top 5 at the Tour because you don't have all of these top guys starting that. And then going to the Grand Tour, I haven't won a stage yet at Grand Tour. I'd really like to see it as an opportunity if the GC doesn't play out. But also a top 10 at the Tour de France is a decent result. So there's 2 options there.
What's one race that you want to tick off before you hang the wheels up?
Well, I was talking to a teammate about this today. I think I've almost done every single World Tour race.
Have you?
Except San Sebastian.
Roubaix, surely not.
Roubaix is the only one because I did Flanders. Remember my Neo Pro year? Hangman broke his arm and I started Flanders.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So
ticked it off?
Yeah, ticked it off. And I think, So
have you done Wavelgem?
No, but it's not. Is it World Tour? I don't think it is.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Oh, maybe it is.
Massive. You know, they've got that massive World Tour list now. I could be wrong, but yeah. Yeah, right. So you got a couple classics left. What was the other one you said?
San Remo? San Sebastian?
You haven't done San Sebastian.
No.
That actually suits you.
I know. But in this team, I always end up having too many race days. And then I've crashed the last few years in Tour, so I can't do it.
So San Sebastian's definitely plausible.
Yeah. Roubaix is probably a pretty hard one to tick off.
Well,
I can always put my hand up for it.
Yeah, exactly. You could do that. You could bulk up.
Yeah. No, there's not too many races that I kind of look at and say, I really want to tick it off because I've done most of them. What about the one that you want to tick off in terms of raise the arms? Win. Oh, if I could win Paris or Dauphiné. Cool. Those two races. Like, they always, when I was growing up, when I started to get more and more into cycling, it was kind of the era that Bradley Wiggins was coming up, and then also Richie Porte was coming up, and they always did well in these races, in Paris or Dauphiné, and I kind of see them as kind of like the mini Tour de France's, so they're a bit more realistic for me to probably do very well at than the actual Tour.
They're gritty, very, very hard races. Definitely don't underpaint them. Haig, thanks for coming on the pod.
No worries. Thanks, mate.
Well, Haig, he's actually a really good guy, and I love it because he just gets it, Haig. He's different, but he just sort of gets what it needs to be in the World Tour. You've got to be a bit weird. Look, I'm weird too, but we're all weird in our own way, and Haig understands what it takes to be at the top level.
And look, a great story, and I didn't realise how long ago it was actually he was back in Australia, because I know he was here for the Tour Down Under. Obviously enjoyed some surfing while he was there, but sounded like he had a good time.
He is good, yeah. I think he's not going to be too far away from retiring, but let's see what he's doing. He looks like he's in too good a shape to be pulling up stumps yet. But, Briggsy, let's talk about something really exciting before we close out. We're talking about doing a few little tours together because I love hanging out with you. I love being up here in Bright. How do we do more stuff together? How do we show people the world up here? Because it's a beautiful part of the world and it's a great chance to get away, isn't it?
It is. So what I'd like to do is actually try to bring as many people down here as possible, you know, whether you're from Sydney or Perth or Brisbane or whatever. But what we want to do is actually make up the opportunity to fly down on a Sunday or drive down on a Sunday and then ride Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, some of the best climbs here in Victoria. So what we're going to do with Bright Velo is create some tours where we're looking at about 23 people that can come along. Mitch, like yourself, is going to be able to host the event, which will be fantastic, and we'll cater for everything, whether it's beers at the bar or the food on the table. We're going to be supplying kind of support vehicles, lead riders and everything. So you won't have to worry about anything. So it'll be a great event. So just go to brightvelo.com.au and you can check it out. But I know you'll be there. Also, on top of that, is we're going to go down to the gravel point of view as well.
We are.
Yeah. And the gravel one's even more exciting because we're going to bring back the pub trip.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know me and my pubs. I love riding. I love the combination between pubs or beers and bikes. There's just something beautiful about it. Earning your beer, doing a hard ride, but then having a nice frosty to just sort of cleanse it out at the end. We found out a nice little combination, 3 gravel loops that all end at a pub. Have a quick cleanser and roll in. I'm starting to sound like an alcoholic, aren't I?
There'll be a couple of cleansers there, mate. But at the end of each route, it's not a very long route, so we're only looking at 10-kilometre ride home. So it might be pretty slow, but we'll get there at the end.
I'm excited. That's coming to us very shortly at the end of this year and leading into next year. I'll look out for that. If you're in Australia, unfortunately, well, no one's sobbing you. Fly in and do these tours. Like, this is the best way to see Australia.
Correct. You know, we tend to ride overseas a lot, but I think we forget that we got some of the best climbs here in Australia as well, right here in the high country.
And the best pubs.
The best pubs as well.
Big thanks goes to our major partner, MAAP. Of course, Red Bricks Media, who are putting this episode together. And you guys for listening. I love hearing from you. Send in your feedback. Send in if you like hearing from Tim, and maybe we can get him on all the episodes, introing and outroing with me. That means I'll have to come up and stay every week up here at Bright Velo.
Yeah, no, it sounds good, mate. We'll just exit one of the rooms and we'll make it the Mitch venue as with your 14 kids here as well.
Thanks, guys. Until next week, I'll speak to you then. Cheers. Cheers, Briggsy.
That iconic music in this episode was composed by none other than the legend Pete Shelley. Cheers, mate.